Right, hello everybody, and welcome back to another video. In this video, I'm going to be talking about something which I've had a bit of a look into, and I have a wee hunch about, but there's no evidence to suggest this. But it's something that there's two stories going on at the moment, and I would not surprise me if they intertwine in some capacity. So what does this mean? As you know, we've been talking about Epstein in Britain, particularly the fallout with Mandelson and the government, and Mandelson's friendship with Epstein. That's been like and of course Andrew as well. Those are the two sort of narratives, and you've also had like the sort of hyper focus by the media on that, as well as making up stories of Russia KGB connections with Epstein and everything, all the sort of nonsense. And then, the usual Jess Phillips narrative of, all men and all that sort of stuff. And so each group has concocted their own framing, position on this. And that's sort of been the dialogue for the last couple of weeks now. Also running in uh, same time as all this has been Rupert Lowe's in inquiry into the grooming gangs and many sort of testimonies which have been and witness statements which have been uh, read out. It has received little to no media attention at all, apart from a wee bit on GB News. And when there has been a sort of any engagement by journalists or anybody on this, it's been largely criticised. Um, as being like deliberately racist or what have you. There's even one particular person who I will not mention, who is you know has denied it, but not from a point of, oh, maybe the story is a bit far fetched, but sort of trying to reinforce. Um, uh, I guess you could say he's denied it because of the one information about a truck, or a lot, as I should say, a van not being able to fit 15 girls in it, and then he goes on to share a dog van and its limitation and everything that goes with it. So he sort of I think he's while he's made a sort of like name for himself being like, against the loony left sort of thing, I actually think he is a total paid up um shill at this point for some, maybe it's the Guardian or something, which would be ironic. Um, would be like, right. No, probably not the Guardian, but someone like that. Some group like that. To run some sort of counter, or always just a total retard. God knows. Anyway, so there's been that, and there's been criticism from that. Uh, but one thing I've noticed is, if you look and when you read the Epstein files and the accounts, which is again, that's none of that's been talked about here in Britain, the actual trafficking of children, the sexual abuse, the rape, real horrible, horrible stuff. None of that's been covered, largely because, in my view, that a lot of it was engaged with wealthy elites, people in elite circles, and politicians. And it was a way for a foreign power to blackmail them, which, as I mentioned in the last video, um, I have a feeling I know which power that would be. But one thing is that when you look at the way Ghislaine Maxwell in the files, and this is through their prosecution. This is when Epstein and her were both charged, or when he was charged firsthand, and then she's been charged as well. So this is all matter of record anyway, in court documents. But um, the similarities into the method. So, um, if you look at Epstein's network, it was very much identical to the grooming gang network that sort of operated out of places like Rochdale, Rotherham, and Bradford, and then would send these children, their victims, to um, the Greater Manchester area, even down as far as the south. To places like Yeovil, um, and down towards Oxfordshire way. And also, I think, as Rupert Lowe points out, even down to London. And there has been, that same group has now been linked in these witness testimonies to an international element where it's not even now national. It is, that these girls have been sent overseas, some for marriages, some for, God knows what else, but basically into, international modern sex slavery, effectively. And when you look at the way that they would target, both used, you know, they would target children who were from broken homes, from uh, dysfunctional families, some in care, some, as I said, within the broken home. They would basically, shower them with gifts, with alcohol, with money, promises. I think within the Epstein case, there was one particular girl who was she was. It was sort of alluded that she was being headhunted for a modeling agency. So there were promises, there were enticing promises of gifts, and at first it seemed, relatively harmless, as they would go on to say. Um, in the Maxwell Epstein case, they would operate what I think was referred to in um, an article as like a pyramid scheme, a recruitment model, um, where Maxwell would pay victims to recruit other young girls. And this was the same tactic that was used in the grooming gangs here in Britain. And you had several instances where these girls here would implicate themselves in the network and would be charged, and for many of them, they would be arrested, and it would be used as a way of by people denying it as it being an exclusively Pakistani um, network, or say, well, look at these girls that they're implicated. It's actually just these rotten apples here, and so it would be a way of discrediting the whole story and or denying it, which even to this day is has been going on, and with, as Rupert Lowe has found out, is still going on. In the case of, and I've looked at the Epstein files, because I actually did type in the grooming gangs and see if there's any sort of connection there, because you know the dark, what you would call, like, people would say, the dark web or the black economy, the sort of underbelly society is vast, but it is small in networks, particularly, networks. And with names being constantly released, and maybe this will change, maybe there is no connection. But one thing that's quite interesting in the Epstein files is I did type in grooming gangs, particularly grooming gangs looking at um, Britain. And if you type in grooming gangs, you'll be brought to a court document titled EFTA 000795513. It's a PDF, and it's part of data set 9. And this one, and it's the only one, so you can look at this in your own time. This one, the communications, it has all been redacted. So the person, whoever is CC'd in, and the person who received it, we are not sure. But what we do know is this was in relation to a Justice Ministry, Mr. William Barr. People might remember that, and then Judge Lorette A. Peresca, which was the U.S. Department of Justice. And this was Um, the dating of it is I think the dating is redacted as well. But if you scroll down to on this particular one page, there's 38 pages. If you scroll down to page 5, and there are the start of it is redacted, but there are a few interesting bits in there. And so um, there's a bit that says this is partially redacted. It says I also tell you that I am, and this is redacted, along couple sentences, caused by then following the statement caused by violent rape or would be the direct manifestation the many violent kidnappings of my sire without that the police only looked for me and the repeated scenario for years and committed on my person during childhood. The statement then follows, I'd like to know if the FBI will come to question the French victims of this network. So the redacted bit seems to indicate a French network of trafficked girls, particularly underage girls, children, as is the case in Great Britain. If so, there will be there will have to be a French English translator and have me sign the declarations in French. I'll do them. Thank you for interviewing the people named in this letter and for obtaining international arrest warrants. I'm sorry about the length of my email, but it's important to you that I understand the whole situation as a whole. So this is a conversation between two redacted individuals. It will be up to you to recover this, which is most important to the investigation. I would like to know if the French and external victims in the United States can integrate the US civil proceedings. If so, I ask for your benevolence to analyze my request and integrate me into them. So, what we have here is the Epstein network is connecting up with a French network, which is probably where some girls would be trafficked to. You had properties from France, Ghislaine Maxwell as well. Um, and we now know, thanks to Rupert Lowe, that there are through these testimonies that there are been get those girls been who have been trafficked out of Britain. Now, some of those traffic said that that they've been trafficked to Pakistan, everything for these arranged marriages or these forced sex slavery. But one thing that is sort of missing this is Paris does have a third world immigrant problem, particularly with organized crime, people like Chechens, um, and so on. It's not beyond the scope, in my mind, and this is just a theory that these two grooming networks don't crisscross with each other, don't cross over with each other. And one thing that's quite interesting is if you remember, well, people may not remember, but right back along the first pe- people to really pick up the cause for this, apart from the families and the immediate community, was in fact the BNP. And it was quickly, then you had Tommy Robinson and the English and Jewish Defence League, later just English Defence League, which took up the standard bearers for that. And it has become this sort of constant talking point, sort of back and forth with Tommy and others. And you know, not to go full conspiracy here, but you know, I've always found it, a lot of the positions by Tommy and others on the counter jihad side is that this is a radical Islamic problem. And while that does seem to be one denominator The actual, common denominator is that these are particularly Pakistani men from their own tribal group who do it, against white girls, mainly because of racial humiliation, maybe even sort of show, racism as well, white racism to assert their dominance, and also, their sort of deep backward cultural thing. I don't And so I mean, that's where, I would say that would be the most common denominator for that group. Um, it's not exactly like Indonesian Muslims in this country and, other group, or Turks, or, what have you. I mean, maybe there have been some, but you see, it seems to be focused on one particular community, one particular group. But this, the counter jihad been wanting this to be, stick to a sort of wider scope problem. And in some ways, it actually the meaning behind this story changes, because then everything becomes politicized and these girls become politicized. And the sad fact is, because it becomes part of the political discussion, the victims in all this end up being, in this case, they end up being the, mistreated by more, the dipshit leftists, right? Who will deny this happened, or maybe even say, well, it happened, but it serves them right because of white privilege, or some crap like that. And, you know, I, uh, I think the fact that, on the right, we should be more oriented towards truth. And as I said, I there's some things I don't view as political. This is quite clearly just a, right and wrong. And what's happened against our people and against these girls is wrong. And this isn't like, this isn't about a counter jihad. This isn't really even about a left right thing. This has to be a right and wrong thing. And if you're as I said, if there was any like UKIPper or Tory or Labour person, and there were Labour and Tory people behind this, predominantly Labour, but there were Tories as well, Tory politicians, and whoever they were, need to be brought to justice. And the grooming gang stuff has been absolutely repressed down. But in some corners, Robinson and Co have been able to produce. Now they get, and I know some the criticism from what I just said here was, well, he's been silenced, he's been cancelled, he's been arrested, he's been this, that, and the other. Some of his arrests have been dubious, but a lot of them have been him just sort of breaking up, um, court orders and what have you. But what I will say is, if there is somebody or something or a story that they want to suppress, and we've seen plenty of examples when they've really, really, like, the establishment, the regime gets behind something to stop um stops anything, um they will do it. I mean, remember during COVID, people right at the start, people who were skeptical about it, you know were pushed to the extremities of the online space. And Tommy's been able to have like these outdoor events and everything. And so in the context of the grooming gangs, it's been able to be talk about through this hyper political lens. Left, right, immigrant, non-immigrant, that sort of stuff, Muslim, non-Muslim, because that's something I think the state can handle. Those sort of conversations, the state can handle. I think though the reality is, far is not something that can be handled, because it actually goes to the actual crux of the problem, which is, you know, partly one of the partly problems is, or it breaks that uh, political illusion. Jeffrey Epstein and friends, and those emails, and definitely the unredacted stuff, breaks all political illusions, because in reality, like in America today, it's becoming like a Trump, Republican, Democrat stuff. Now it's like the Republican Party is part of the pedophile stuff, and yeah, they're defending. I mean, for some unknown reason, you had Pam Bondi the other day behaving like some drunk Daft Bint, what I mean, giving evidence, and you have, and this is largely thanks down to Massey, the Congressman Massey in America, who's been, sort of trying to be pushing and been pushing. And I think a lot of these emails that we have, which we wouldn't know about, is down to him. But also, you have Bill Clinton, and this isn't really like, I mean, party politics, as we all know, is all just fake and gay anyway. It's not real. But what this does is this sort of, it goes one step further. It's like it's fake and gay, and by the way, all these people are compromised, and look at all the shit they get up to in their own time. And this is what they think of you, truly. So anyway, that is it. I'll see you all next time. Thanks for watching, and give a like and a subscribe, and I'll see you all next time.